Well, good morning. My name is Tom Lundquist, and I work with Prison Fellowship. I've been involved with the academy, now we call it, down in Shakopee Prison, and with Lino Lakes. And we're a faith-based reentry program. Here we go. Okay, patience. So, we've been operating at Lino Lakes since 2002. We've got anytime 150 men in our program. It's a voluntary program. People can leave at any time. In the women's program at Shakopee, we have 40 women, and we've been doing that since 2005. So to set up our panel discussion this morning, I want to ask you 3 questions. First one is, what do we think about people in prison? Second question is, what does God think about people in prison? And then thirdly, can people change? Because these are central questions that are being asked in corrections and in the church. So I'm going to start with Rick, first off. Rick, tell us a little bit about your life today.
Well, today I just actually came from my men's group to here. I'm now married. I have a 2.5-year-old son, 2 stepchildren, an amazing wife who believes in the Lord. Just bought a beautiful home in Woodbury. I work. I'm a union carpenter. Been in that for 3 years now. Everything's coming up on 3 now. My marriage, work, my son. So life is good. I attend a prison fellowship breakfast once a month. Talk to guys that are coming out, trying to encourage them to, with the struggles I've had or whatever I can help them and guide them with. Yeah.
What we're hoping to do here this morning is give you a picture in these guys' lives of who they were, how they've changed, and how life is, and some of the challenges of transition coming out. So Rick, tell us about who you were before you came to prison.
I was a drug addict, thief. I was a bad person, lack of better words. It's crazy that I'm actually sitting here right now in Rosemount because that's where I lack crime. So if you're from this area, I apologize to you. And I'm doing everything I can to change my life and give back to society. I was not a very good person before I came to Christ, and it's just, phenomenal that I'm sitting here in Rosemount right now and actually giving back to the community.
So, as Greg read in your bio, you've been to prison a number of times. Didn't really seriously consider changing your life. Tell us how that changed.
Well, like the bio said, I've been to prison several times. This is my fourth time in there. Got about a total of 12 years in there. And I'm sitting in Dakota County Jail trying to fight my case. And there's some guys doing some bodies, and I attended a couple and, felt something. And then I went and seen my public defender. She showed me a copy of an email from the prosecutor. Said that he's been to prison several times. If he loses, we're going for 20 years, 240 months. He's been to prison several times. He should feel right at home. Ooh, that scared me. I was actually shaking in my sandals. Went back to my jail cell, and like I said, I was reading the Bible a little bit, and something told me to read Isaiah 43, and in 43:25 it said, I am he who blots out your sins for my own sake and remember them no more. And he spoke to me right there. And I was like, I know I'm guilty of my crime. And I just told the Lord, I said, you know what? I'm going into court. I'm guilty. I'll take what's coming to me, and I'm going to change my life. And that's what I did. And that was in 2000. And throughout prison, I did everything I could to better myself. I read the Word every day. I noticed that the rec guys are here. They were influential in my life in prison, through St. Cloud to Lino Lakes. How you doing, guys? Love you, brothers, man. Whew. So, yeah.
That's cool. Thanks, guys. It's neat how the Lord works. So you began your process of change, and you came into our program and made a lot of changes, grew a lot. What was it like getting out? What were some of the positive things? What were some of the challenges you faced?
Well, the challenges I faced, one of my worries was, when I get out, I don't know any godly people or, the people that ever walk in the path I was trying. I just know ex-felons and criminals. And I grew up without no parents. My mother passed away when I was young. My dad was never there. So my sister tried to raise me. So my fear was getting out and getting involved with people that were of Christ, walking the path I'm walking. And that was a prayer of mine early on, a couple years before I got out, like, Lord, who are these men you're going to put in my life, godly men? Well, today I got Tom Lundquist I meet with all the time, consider him my spiritual mentor. And then I got a life mentor, and they've been influential in my life to help guide me and direct me in the path I need to go,
And then you had a mentor on the inside, and then on the outside, Ron Gregory. Share a little bit about what that meant to you.
Ron Gregory, the hands and feet of Christ. Man, wonderful guy. He, that meant a lot to me because he faithfully came up to the prison, met with me, I think it was once a week. We talked about the Lord. He brought a scripture, shared his life with me, successful man. And just when I got out, he faithfully picked me up, got me to the church I needed to get to any AA meetings I was going to, helped me with the license. Never had a driver's license in my life, and I still talk to Ron today. Amazing guy, like I said. Yeah.
What were some of the fears you had and the challenges you faced when you got out of prison?
My first fear was telling Tom that my girlfriend was pregnant. Anyways, but I did the next best thing. I put a ring on her finger and we got married. So, yeah. But the fears was just, trying to land a good job. I knew I had to take it slow. Took what I could get and was faithful with that, and he provided much more.
Looking back now, you can see God's hand in providing jobs. You ended up going to Eagle Brook Church in their recovery program, Quest 180. That's where you met Alyssa, right? Yep. So that was an important part of your life. What are some things you'd like to share with people here today that would help them understand your experience of coming out and then how they could help?
Let me back up a little bit to Ron Gregory, my mentor. So he helped me get to my meetings and my men's group and to the church I needed to get to. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't probably be, I wouldn't say right here, right now, but I wouldn't be in the position with my wife. It was because of him I met my wife. Because of him I was able to get to jobs I needed to get to. Having a mentor in my life was just huge,
That's a good point. We're going to talk, for those who are interested, about mentoring at one of the workshops here after a little bit. Just the really incredible role mentors have in helping bridge people to getting established on the outside. It's very important. Well, I want to take time here to run some questions by Tim. So Tim, tell us about yourself today, and then tell us about who you were before you came to prison.
I was finding it ironic while you were talking, I thought, it's interesting how God takes the worst of us to bring out the best in us. And we can all learn from each other. And when Lee Buckley was speaking, me as an ex-convict, it touched my heart to see there's somebody in the system who really cares about people, because there's that huge part of me that was damaged in my upbringing, that to this day there's a little piece of it that holds on and says, I'm not worth anything. I will never compare, I'll never measure up. But the good news is it's not all about me. So God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. And I had like a 10-minute speech prepared and just totally threw it out the window when Lee was talking about Aryan nations and the guy in Aryan nations, because I was in Aryan nations and I brought Aryan nations into a prison in Missouri, and I did my very best to upset the apple cart of structure and accountability in the prison, and so none of us come out of prison the way we went in, and I didn't go in a racist, I came out a racist. So the prison was not teaching me to be a better person. Prison in Missouri was a little different than up here in Minnesota, but I was also in Aryan Nations up here in Oak Park Heights Prison. I knew a guy by the name of Greg M., who was in the organization for a very long time. He and I were friends, but yet I didn't like him, because it's a long story, but he killed a Mountie, a couple of cops, and I think he looked down his nose at me like, I wasn't good enough. And it was really interesting when I did my DNA through Ancestry.com and found out that I'm not entirely white. That was really kind of cool. It was a cool moment. But, it's been many years since I've been racist, just so you know. But God just magically put some water on top of my Bible. But Tom, I know you asked me a question, but I just want to do something that Lee put in consciousness, okay? This is a Bible that I slept with in prison. And God loved me even when I was a racist. It's not about what we've done in our lives, it's who we are. Sometimes we forget who we are. But this was under my pillow. I put it on my chest very often, and I prayed, and sometimes I cried, but I did it very silently because you don't cry in prison. And this is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I picked up in prison. And there was a guy who came into the prison to support us, and he left his book on the table, and I stole it. The Bible, I stole that from the prison library, church library. And courtesy of Faye, I asked for this prop. She went and got a dictionary from the library, and I'll give it back, I promise. The only difference between the dictionary, the Bible, and the big book is the order of words. All the same words, but they're all ordered differently. And King David was an adulterer, he was a murderer, he did things that were wrong, but he loved God and his heart was surrendered to God. And God eventually turned it around. So we need God's help. And when we surrender our hearts, our lives, even if they've been blown up and all the words go up into the sky and come back down, they come down in an order that makes sense. But we have to trust that whatever has happened in our past is being used for the greater good. To believe there's not a God is like saying that you blow up the Bible and all the words go up into the air and they come back down all in the order that's in the Bible, right? It's obvious that there's structure in our universe that is spiritual in nature. And when Lee talked about the cloud over the prison, when I first stepped into the bloodiest 47 acres in America, is what they labeled it, in Missouri, it was like being born into hell. I walked into that prison and I couldn't breathe. I just went, and I took a breath into the spiritual darkness. of murder and mayhem and spiritual oppression, and it was not my imagination. I talked to a lot of guys. So our spiritual battle is real, and it is about spirit. And in that place, when someone would pray for me, I could feel it, and I knew it. The place was so dark that you send any light into it, you notice it. And I could even feel who was praying. So prayer is very important and it's very real. And if we're going to dispel the darkness, we have to do it from the inside. You have to go into the inside and connect with people. I had an insider come in through amicus that me in Oak Park Heights prison. But I was amazed that he was also supporting himself because he valued me as a human being, and he asked my opinion about things. And I was thinking, man, what is this guy that's never been in prison asking me questions about how to conduct his life? He's got everything that I've wanted, a wife and children, and he's, put his life into an order that blesses other people. He had all these things. What's he asking me any questions for? But he meant it, and I sensed it. And at first I was suspicious, but eventually I figured it out. We're friends to this day, many, many years later. He touched my heart, and he gave me hope. And there's a part of me that always feels hopeless as an ex-convict, and there's times I spent most of my life wanting to commit suicide. And but people that come along like Faye and you and Tom, and there's people that show up that keep giving me strength and hope. God works through others. We need each other. And I thought about telling a story about Mother as I was driving up here, and right when I thought it, a blue heron flew over the car. And I always consider a blue heron a spiritual messenger because I also not follow just Christ, but I follow the native tradition as well. And I took that as a yes. And Mother Teresa was being interviewed by 2 radio talk show hosts in Portland, Oregon. Very popular show. And she was trying to get funds for a homeless shelter. And at the end of the program, the 2 talk show hosts asked her, they said, "What can we do for you, Mother Teresa? You've spent your entire life helping others. What can we do for you?" And she said, "What you can do for me is to go find someone who feels alone and persuade them that they're not." And I always felt alone. That was my problem, And when we connect with other people, look into the windows of the soul of another human being through their eyes, you got to see their eyes. It can't be a theory. You show up in prison, and you let your spirit shine through your eyes, and you let them see who you really are. It gives them hope and connection. And, and you might be saving future victims. You may be saving the person who you say, "I love you" to, through the means that you can say it. Let's tell them, "I love you, Tom." I mean, I do love you, brother, But if you're scared of that word, don't be scared in your spirit, because that's the only thing that people are really going to see. So I don't know if I answered your questions, but...
Well, I want to respect our time, and I also want to give you an opportunity to ask questions of both of these guys. So do we have any questions that come up as you're listening to these men? No questions? Any questions about what it's like to be in prison? Yeah. Sure, that guy.
Part of my success was wanting it, and also I believe my mentor played a huge role in coming alongside of me and helping me with what I needed to, do, and that's what I believe. One answer.
I think my success has been in service. I think giving to others and loving others. The scripture says that God with all thy heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love others as yourself. That's been the source of every success that I've had in my life. every good thing that's in my life today has been a direct result of helping someone else. And if you want to keep your freedom, if you want to keep your love in life, you want to keep God in your life, you got to give that away. Because in the physical world, when we give something away, we no longer have it. But in the spiritual world, to keep it, we have to give it away. That's how it works. It's like if God is your co-pilot, you need to switch seats. And don't worry that you can't see God in the seat flying that plane, you know. It's like jump and build your parachute on the way down. Have some faith, you know. So.
Yeah, along with that faith, another huge part of it was, you know, allowing Christ into my life and letting him take the reins.
I just want to make a couple of comments too. That's a great question. Question we ask all the time: how do we help people succeed in reentry? One thing that Rick had mentioned: if you do not make a decision to say goodbye to your negative peers, your former criminal friends, the research shows if you keep one negative person in your life, you will go back to prison. So the idea that you have to say goodbye to people, which for many people, including Rick, was everybody. So you have to find a new tribe. And that leads to that second part, is people getting out of prison, not only do they need housing, not only do they need jobs, but they need community. And when you find people who love you, who want to know you, who want to accept you, and then that becomes a normal part of your life, you're well on your way in reentry to doing well. See that hand raised back there? Yeah. You guys want to respond to that?
Join the Second Chance Coalition. I don't know if you ever heard of that yet, but there's a big coalition going. It's called Second Chances, and we're trying to fight stuff like that, housing, jobs. Right now, I just had to put in for a background check for a job through the union at the refinery right here in Rosemount. I'm supposed to be going there Monday. Apparently, I don't know. So I sent in the paperwork. I'm probably going off track here, but I sent in the paperwork for the background check. I had to reinitial it, send it back in, and the guy did it, and so I did it again, and he called me back a little bit later, and it's supposed to take 2 to 3 days, and he said, nope, you're still on for Monday. So I don't know if I actually passed it yet or not, but he's saying I did. But to your question, I would say, you know, there is a lot of felony-friendly jobs. Guys just got to do research and figure out who they are. And another thing is just to be a part of the second coalition of Second Chances.
I think I've had a little more of a difficult time securing gainful employment than my brother here. It took me 18 months to get my first job, not because of the industry problems that were out there, but because I came out pretty crazy, you know. Came out of prison the second time, just crazy. And it took me 18 months of solid AA meetings, therapy, going to church, and really working hard to put my life back on track so I wasn't mad at everybody and everything. Had some serious healing to do, right? So then I got my first job for minimum wage, and the state paid part of my wages to the employer. So there was that. The state does allow help for people that first get out. But here it is, my last crime was 84, and to this day I can't get the type of jobs that I want to get. I want to help people. I want to work in treatment centers. Treatment centers are vulnerable adults. They say, it's illegal, Timothy, sorry, you can't work here. It doesn't matter that I, have a sincere heart and I've turned my life around, evidently, because the letter of the law is more important than the spirit of the law for some people. So what do you do with that? I understand why the mechanisms are in place. We need to protect people. That's clear. But when do you forgive people? All this talk about forgiveness, but yet the practice of it are like East and West. And so bringing that into reality today, it's like I didn't even go for an education, partly because of victim mentality, which I don't need, but I had it. I just realized I can't get a job with the degree, so why bother? And really, I should have got the education. I recently applied for a Mindy job, going into the prisons and helping people believe in second chances and working with employment. So I've done some of that already, but I'm just wondering if my background check is going to come back, and even though I'm probably qualified, I'm not legal, maybe. You know, say a prayer. Let's just throw that out there, say a prayer. But it's very difficult to get a job now. People don't trust me. They look at me, say, you are a racist, you're an ex-convict, you're all these things. It's not, who are you, Timothy Cameron? They're not looking with the Spirit. They're looking through their fear. They're looking through their pain. We need to help people remember that we are human just like everybody else, and so are you. You know, we are one. I don't know if I really answered the question, but my drug test comes back clean, you know.
I want to add too, there are a lot of barriers for people with felony records, and that's something we're trying to raise awareness on. Some of them are incredibly onerous and should not be, many of them. There is a movement, Rick mentioned it, the Second Chance Coalition is a group locally of many agencies and faith-based organizations who are banding together to try to change the social conversation and improve it, and also bring to bear on legislation too, to help that be different. Also too, there are many faith-based and community-based agencies that are involved in networking to help people. And just like we do a monthly breakfast, one in St. Paul, one in Minneapolis, where it's open to people coming out of prison, and where that's a great place to network. Because people, we hear where jobs are open. One of the best ways to get a job is to find out who knows who's working there. So it's interesting, once you get into this network, and if you really do want to do things differently, we see pretty much very few people have problems getting jobs. Because they'll have someone who knows of a place who will refer you, recommend you. And things are improving in terms of the awareness. Many employers now, 1 in 4 Minnesotans has a criminal background of some type. So the idea is that you can't just unilaterally discriminate against people with records. It's too difficult. So employers, many times, they or themselves have had a family member who has had a brush with the legal system. So things are starting to shift towards more of an openness to who's in front of me and would they be a good employee, and not just, you know, what happened to them 10 years ago. Something we do encourage our people to do is be prepared to tell your story, and you bring it up in your interview. If you pretend that you didn't go to prison and hope they don't background check, I think everyone who's done that strategy has not gotten the job. Because in the internet age, it's all findable. And the people we said, now be prepared to tell them that you've been in prison. Don't lead with that. Hi, I'm so-and-so, I went to prison. Don't lead with that. Talk to them, let them get to see who you are, that you're a person who's sincere and earnest. And then tell them, I want you to know I was in prison. This is what I did. This is not who I am anymore. And the idea is that if you're direct and honest, that works in your favor. And curiously enough, most everyone I've talked to who's done that, that's worked for them and they've gotten the job. So there are strategies and there are places to definitely pursue, but there's ones that are not open yet, and that has to change. Any other questions? Yeah.
My family, they weren't, I don't know how to, I got 2 sisters and 2 brothers, one passed away in 2009, and so that's the extent of my family. My sister, she tried to stay in contact, you know, and, you know, I told her it's changed my life, and of course she's like, oh yeah, you said this before, you know, da-da-da-da. and they had every right not to believe me until I was out at least 1 year doing everything I said I was going to be doing. And, she has kids of her own, so it's hard. I don't have no parents, so I didn't have no parents come alongside of me. I don't know, just a sister, and she was there, but initially I knew I had to work on myself and do things for myself, so.
I always have this really difficult time understanding what family means, and I just don't wrap my mind around it. I'm happy for other people that have them, but it's just not part of my, if anything has been my family, it's probably been the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. But my brother and I were taken away from my bio mom when we were quite young and deemed the worst case of abuse they had seen in the state of Minnesota. And then, I personally went through a number of group homes, foster home, sexual abuse, emotional, spiritual abuse. It was just a long line of difficulties. So family was pretty much non-existent. I didn't have any. My brother visited me one time in 6 years in the Missouri State Penitentiary, and my mom came one time, and then she got on a guy's visiting list in prison and was visiting him for a while, and I didn't even know it until one day he felt bad, and he says, your mom's been visiting. I'm thinking, geez, she never even came to visit me. I thought, it's all right. But no family really, and I don't know, if you show up for somebody in prison, maybe they'll call you brother or sister eventually, and maybe you can be the one that gets to be their family. When I saw Tom when I first came in, I looked at him and my spirit leapt for joy, and I said, "How you doing, brother?" And I see Tom in the spirit, and I believe people that are loving. It's just easy to do, and if anything, that's family. So. But continued love and care drives that love deeper, and I guess that's family. I don't know. Not sure that answers your question, sir.
Actually, these guys' experience is very with that picture that for many people in prison, their families, they do not come from stable families. And many times phone calls home, if there are any, are talking to people in a lot of chaos. So that's why it's so important, and what Tim was saying is so important, is that the support and the community that people can receive when they come out is really the family that they're going to be part of. Psalm 68:6 says that the Lord sets the lonely in families and causes the prisoner to sing. And that is a cool picture of God's heart, that he brings people who've been very hurt, very broken, out of prison, and for us to embrace them as a community of faith. So I see our time is pretty much wrapped up here.